What's up guys, so I just want to do a very quick video around the launch of what Formula E are calling the Gen 2 Evo car. Just been revealed today in picture form, and this is the second iteration of the Generation 2 car. It's like an update package, if you like, a revamp which will happen from the end of this year. So it's for the 2020-2021 season. So that'll be 2 years in from when the Generation 2 car was originally launched. And I have to say that I did a video way back when the Generation 2 car was first unveiled, and I was blown away by it. Just been out and come back, seen on my phone that there's been an email from Formula E. Yes, there it is. Wow. Wow, that looks awesome. It was exactly what Formula E needed to do, to have something that was unique, stand out, that was distinctive, that looked like no other racing car. Because that's what Formula E is. It's like nothing else. And so that car, the Gen 2 car, is planned to run for 4 years. Now if you left that car alone and left it exactly as it was, in 4 years' time, it's not going to look dated because it was such a futuristic car, but it won't have changed, it'll have stagnated. And from the outside, the perception will be that Formula E hasn't moved on at all in 4 years. People are so used to seeing the likes of Formula 1 be transformed every couple of weeks, where updates have been brought to the car, visual, aerodynamic package updates, if you like. Well, Formula E's not like that. Doesn't mean though there's nothing going on underneath the bodywork. It doesn't mean there's not development happening all the time. There absolutely is. Formula E has taken enormous leaps and bounds in terms of technology. So I think updating it just refreshes it, gives it new life. So let's have a look at exactly what they've done, because it's interesting. I like the look of it. The Gen 2 Evo car, it's not an enormous departure. It's still based on the same chassis, but it has tweaks mostly to the front wing, the rear wing, if you want to call it a rear wing, and of course this enormous shark fin that they've now added in. I'm not going to do a video like I do with the start of a Formula 1 season, where I sort of analyse the aero features of every car and what they mean, what they're there for, because the reality is with the Formula E car, there is very little in terms of aero. This is not an aero-based championship. The tweaks and flick-ups and new designs you see on this, of course, will have been tested in wind tunnels and will be aero efficient. But that's the key here. It's all about aero efficiency. It's not, like Formula 1 is, all about adding downforce and trying to trade downforce off against drag. This is all about being low drag. These cars need to be efficient to maximise the efficiency of that electric drivetrain. They don't need downforce necessarily, because every car is the same, so there's no competitive advantage to having some flick-ups here or some aero developments here or there that give more or less, because everyone's got the same platform. Also, if you've got a car that's low drag and efficient in terms of its drivetrain usage and its power usage, but has very low grip on tyres that are essentially road tyres and very low aero downforce packages, it makes them harder to drive. It makes the car slide around. It makes for great racing at the end of the day. Drivers make mistakes. These are a handful to drive, and that's what makes the show as spectacular as it does. It's what makes the racing so close. Now there are a couple of reasons they've gone for these changes, in my opinion. One is that the current format of the Gen 2 car has really kind of encouraged the drivers to bash into each other quite a lot, if we're honest, because the cars they're not indestructible, but they are pretty robust. You know, these things can take a little bit of abuse. The old cars, which had that covered wheel, allowed them to do a little bit of nudging in the corners, and it was getting to the point where perhaps we were seeing too much of that. A lot of people were complaining it's become a little bit too much like Mario Kart racing in that sense. So perhaps moving to what we've got now with the Gen 2 Evo car, you can discourage a little bit of that, because the driver now has to, by the look of it, look after his car a little bit more. This looks a little bit more fragile. I mean, not to the level that the first generation of Formula E car was, but it definitely looks a little bit more like it has to be protected. And that might just change the thought process of a driver moving forward. To the front end, we've uncovered the front wheels. I think the other thing that's going to do, and I've heard drivers talk about this already, is that it's going to improve the vision of the driver. That wheel cover on the old car definitely restricted some of the impact or some of the view that the driver could see from the cockpit. You know, when you're talking about trying to clip apex curbs in a corner, you need to have line of sight over the top of your wheel towards that apex curb, and if you don't have that, you're kind of guessing to some extent. So by taking away that wheel cover, you will improve that line of sight for the driver. I think the front end might generate a little bit more downforce potentially with those profiled flaps that we have now. You might find that flick up, where the return comes on the front wing end plate, just also helps to control some of that front wheel wake. Not such an issue in Formula E by any means like it is in Formula 1, but maybe it'll have a small effect in that sense as well. At the rear end, of course, the rear wing loses that old familiar X-wing that we have on the current Gen 2 car and comes towards something more similar to what we've got at the front, where the rear wing just has a return. It's not a full rear wing, and it doesn't really need to be, because any downforce that is generated by this car is largely coming from the enormous diffuser at the back end. But it's just about changing the style. This is a stylistic change. It's about making this look more impressive. And the other big noticeable change, of course, is that enormous fin on the rear wing, isn't it? On the rear bodywork, isn't it? That shark fin. Now that, again, will have very little, if any, aerodynamic impact. It's much more a marketing change. It gives a big flat space to allow sponsors to put their logos, to put their brands, and without the element of a rear wing that you have in most other formulas, where that's prime marketing space, perhaps that shark fin is there to take up some of that prime real estate that teams can then sell on to sponsors. But look, overall, I really like it. I like the fact that Formula E have done this. I still think the car looks great. It still looks unique, and I think that's exactly, as I say, what Formula E should be. I also know that there are some sketches or some images floating around of the Gen 3 car, which is already well into its design process. They're not publicly available. I haven't seen them. I know some people that have, and say they are pretty spectacular as well.